This next question says, why do some centers require low-fat diet while others do not? Shouldn't there be a standard across the board? Some places say no nuts / popcorn for a year after, others do not. The difference in diet recommendations really makes one question if they're doing the right thing for themselves or their loved one post-surgery.
Yeah. So I'll answer this a couple of ways. I think we could, just from a nutrition standpoint in general, in the U.S., I think just education about nutrition is something that is needed. As Americans, we don't get any education about how to eat well. And so I'll say that to start. Again, this all comes back to these kind of common themes we've been talking about, right? So you could probably just play one segment of me saying this and just play it over and over, but this is not a common operation. And so, some people are doing this small numbers of times a year, and some people are doing this lots of times a year. And so you get a variety of opinions based on a variety of experiences. I think all this centers around this risk of chylous ascites, right? Which is a fancy medical word for lymphatic fluid can build up in your abdomen after this operation and makes you feel not good. And you would have to get that fluid drained out. And then depending on how severe it is, sometimes you have to be put on either completely shut down where you can't eat anything other than maybe, drinking some things just to keep yourself hydrated, and then put on something called TPN, which is a form of nutrition that gets put in through your veins. And so you kind of shut down the diet, get nourished through the veins to seal off this leak. That's kind of the worst case scenario. And there's some kind of refractory cases where very rarely some other things have to be done. But the whole diet question centers around trying to avoid this. This, again, I think comes back to experience. I think the risk of chylous ascites is a little bit volume dependent. So the more that this operation is done, you have a lower incidence of having chylous ascites. And so maybe, for example, here in Indiana, we, ahead of time, we don't have you eat a high fat diet, and we're not as strict saying, don't eat any fat afterwards, because our risk of chylous ascites is low. Although that being said, we certainly have patients that develop it. And so, I think it's a conservative way to do it. If you said, you have to have a no fat diet for, X amount of weeks, or you can't eat nuts or popcorn for a year, I think that's a super conservative approach. I don't know if it's not wrong. I mean, you're trying to, prevent the patient from having a problem. But I think that's kind of explains why you see so much variation. I think here in Indiana, we're not going to tell you not to eat those things for a year. Do I want you going home in the first week or two and eating Big Macs and pizza? No, I don't want you doing that either. But I'm not going to tell you that you have to be on a zero fat diet. And I don't think my partner would either, Tim Masterson, but, so it kind of centers around that. I think it involves what's your risk of developing chylous ascites. We don't want you going home in that first, 4 weeks of surgery, piling in a bunch of high fat foods, but at the same time, we're not going to torture you with a zero fat diet just because our incidence is low. But on the other end, I think other folks are just being conservative and again, speaks to, back to what we talked about. It's just, there's a lot of variability, when something is not common.
That was not my question, but it does answer. I did have that question because I did not remember being told anything about a diet. And I think because you did it and you said you had the low incidence of the side effect, maybe it wasn't a risk for me. I don't remember what I ate. I'm not going to say it wasn't a Big Mac. It probably wasn't a Big Mac, but I definitely had some chocolate. Um,
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't want to say we don't have anything happen, because we certainly have patients that complications happen to, but I don't know. I mean, it can be if you put someone on a zero fat diet, that's a very restrictive diet, obviously, and recovering from surgery is, it's a big enough deal, and then you on a zero fat diet. I just feel like for the majority of patients don't need to do that. And so I don't want to torture everybody with that low fat diet or zero fat diet, when only a small number is even going to develop. And then those that it does develop in, we can deal with that and get you through that if that were to happen to that group of people.